I faked a stomach cramp so vicious it had the whole table at the officers' mess hall gasping, General Harlan's own wife, clutching her pearls like they were a lifeline, excusing herself with tears in her eyes to the pitying nods of brass and their Botox spouses. What they didn't know, as I stumbled into the shadowed hallway reeking of polished boots and stale cigar smoke, was that the real poison wasn't in my gut, but in the man who'd sworn to protect me. The one who'd just toasted my health with a glass of spiked Merlot. And, in that moment, as my vision blurred and my knees buckled against the cold concrete, I made a vow to God, the devil, and every red, white, and blue ghost in this godforsaken base. I drag his empire down brick by betraying brick, even if it meant burning my own soul to ash. That collapse? It wasn't an accident. It was the opening shot in a war I'd been fighting solo for 15 years. Ever since I took the fall for Jack Harlan's first sin, a botched arms deal in Kandahar that left 3 Marines dead and me, the dutiful army wife, whispering lies to the investigators to keep his stars pinned on. It was my idea, I told them, voice cracking like a recruit's first salute, while he stood in the wings, eyes dry as desert sand. Betrayal isn't a knife in the back, it's a slow drip of venom. And Jack, he was the goddamn forestand. But tonight, under the fluorescent hum of Fort Bragg's underbelly, I hit the floor not with a thud, but with a plan, a meticulously forged ledger of his dirty deals, hidden in a burner phone tucked in my garter, ready to unravel the man who'd made me his scapegoat one too many times. You think revenge is clean? Hell no. It's a back-alley brawl in the rain-slicked streets of Fayetteville, where the winners limp away with more scars than trophies. I clawed my way up from that hallway, visions swimming like I'd mainlined bad moonshine. And that's when the real hook sank in, the secret I'd buried deeper than a K-bar in enemy flesh. Jack hadn't just framed me once. He'd fathered a shadow child with my best friend, Sarah, during his deployments, and I'd known, God help me, I'd known, and covered it all with a smile and a casserole at the next wives' club meeting. 15 years of swallowing bile. And now the reckoning. The paramedics found me slumped against a rusted fire extinguisher cabinet, my gown hiked up like some cheap Vegas showgirls, mascara streaking down my cheeks in black rivers. Ma'am? Colonel Harlan's wife, the kid with the buzz cut and the name tag, Rodriguez, knelt beside me, his gloved hand on my pulse point, radio crackling with that urgent static that always sounds like bad news incoming. I could hear the dinner's laughter echoing faint from the mess hall, clinking glasses and brass bands swing tunes masking the fact that the queen bee had just keeled over in the shadows. Unseen. Unmourned.
Until now.
Poison, I rasped, grabbing his wrist like it was a lifeline. Not food, drink. The Merlot from the head table. His eyes widened, that fresh-faced mix of duty and doubt. But he didn't hesitate. Code blue. Possible talks. They barked into the mics, wheeling me out past the saluting MPs who snapped to like I was Patton reincarnate. By the time Jack burst into the ER at Womack Army Medical Center, tie askew and face flushed from one too many scotches, the docs had already pumped my stomach and run the talk screen. Atropine derivatives, military-grade shit. The kind they whisper about in black ops circles. Not enough to kill, but enough to make a statement. Back off. Mags. Or next time, it's permanent. He played the devastated husband to perfection, collapsing into the vinyl chair by my bed, gripping my hand like we'd renewed our vows that morning. Jesus. Margaret. What the hell happened? You said it was indigestion. His voice cracked just right. That gravelly baritone honed from years of barking orders at sand-swept privates. The nurses cooed. The duty officer took notes. And I lay there, for dripping mercy into my veins, staring at the man who'd slipped the drop into my glass himself.
Why?
Because I'd finally mustered the guts to whisper to the JAG about that Kandahar ledger, the one with his signature on ghost shipments of AKs to the wrong hands. 15 years ago, I'd confessed to tampering with manifests to shield him, lost my clearance, my charity board seats, my shot at anything beyond bake sales and base brats. And now, with the statute ticking down, I decided enough was enough.
Oh,
Jack, I murmured, squeezing his hand back, my voice a fragile trill. It must have been a mistake. Someone's out to get us. Lies. Sweet as pecan pie. Because the truth would have torched his career faster than a hellfire in a Haji hut. But inside, the gears were grinding. That burner phone? It held scans of every falsified invoice. Every offshore account funneled through a shell corp in the Caymans, his retirement fund skimmed from DoD contracts. I'd started compiling it 2 years back, after finding the paternity test in his desk drawer. Sarah's boy. Little Tommy with Jack's cleft chin and my old bestie's fire-red hair. Turning 6 next month. I'd confronted her once. Over chamomile tea at the PX. And she'd crumbled like week-old cornbread. He promised he'd leave you. Mags. But the command. It changes a man. Changes a man? It turned him into a snake, shedding skins and striking from the dark. As the morphine haze pulled me under, I pictured it, the first move in my chess game. Leak a tip to the base rag. Anonymous. About irregularities in the armory inventory. Nothing big, just enough to trigger an audit. Let the ants swarm before the boot drops. Jack leaned in, kissing my forehead, his breath hot with bourbon and deceit. I'll find who did this, baby. No one touches my wife. I smiled weakly, eyes fluttering shut. Your wife, I thought, is about to touch you back. Waking up at dawn to the bugle call over the PA, I felt the fracture lines spiderwebbing through our life. The base was abuzz, whispers and the chow line about the colonel's wife nearly croaking at the gala. Sarah texted from her on-post McMansion, heard about last night. You okay? Coffee? I deleted it. Fingers trembling. No more coffees. No more blind eyes. Discharge papers in hand by noon. I Ubered home, our split-level colonial with a flagpole out front and the Harlan Strong sticker on the minivan, past the checkpoints where sentries eyed me like yesterday's news. Jack was in the den, on a secure line to his CO, spinning yarns about internal threats from disgruntled vets. I slipped upstairs, past the gallery of framed photos. Us at West Point, him pinning my corsage at the ball, baby showers with Sarah smirking in the background like a Cheshire cat. In our bedroom, I pried up the floorboard under the hope chest, the one with my old service ribbons from when I was a comms specialist before marriage clipped my wings. There it was, the manila envelope, fat with printouts. Emails from his burner to a fixer in D.C. Payoffs to silence witnesses from Kandahar. And the kicker, a forged psych eval I'd signed confessing to my own instability, used to discredit me if I ever talked. I sat on the edge of the bed, the envelope heavy as guilt in my lap, and that's when the tears came, not for the poison, but for the girl I'd been, the one who'd loved a lie. Jack's footsteps on the stairs snapped me back. Mags? Docs say rest up. He filled the doorway, broad-shouldered in his starched AFUs. The hero poster boy. I tucked the envelope away, pasted on a smile. Just tired.
Hun.
Let's order pizza, celebrate my survival. That night, over extra cheese and his stories of hunting the bastard down, I watched him devour slice after slice. Oblivious to the app on my phone pinging silent alerts, the anonymous tip filed, routed through a VPN in Reno. By morning, the auditors would land like paratroopers on D-Day. And Jack, he'd flip the script. Blame the ragtag remnants of his old unit, the ones he'd screwed over in the desert. Misdirection. His specialty. But me? I'd be the ghost in the machine. The wife who smiled through the storm while plotting the flood. The days blurred into a tense tango. Jack ramped up the charm, flowers from the florist on post. Surprise date nights at that ribs joint off Bragg Boulevard where the pulled pork stuck to your ribs like regret. But his eyes darted, always checking the rear view for tales that weren't there yet. I played along, the perfect invalid, while digging deeper. Hacked his email with a password he'd never changed, Kandahar 87. Sentimental fool. There it was, threads with a senator's aide. Greasing palms for a cushy Pentagon posting. And Sarah, God. The emails to her were pornographic poetry. Promises of divorce, once the dust settles. One evening, as cicadas screamed outside and lightning forked over the pines, I drove to her place unannounced. The boy answered the door, all freckles and curiosity. Aunt Mags, Mommy's in the kitchen. Tommy hugged my legs, smelling of crayons and innocence, and my heart twisted like a bayonet. Sarah emerged, apron dusted with flour, her laugh faltering when she saw my face. Mags, you look
Peaked.
We sat at her formica table, coffee steaming untouched. Tell me why, I said, voice flat as Carolina Clay. Why him? Why me carrying the corpse? She crumbled, spilling it all. The affair sparked in a USO tent. The pregnancy scare that glued them. The way Jack gaslit her into silence. He said you'd never leave. Said you were weak.
Weak.
The word ignited something feral. I stood, knocking over the mug. Weak gets poisoned.
Sarah.
Strong gets even. Driving back through sheets of rain, wipers slapping like accusations, I felt the fracture widen. Jack was in the living room when I got home, scotch in hand, TV droning Fox News. Miss me? He pulled me close, lips brushing my ear. I leaned in, inhaling his aftershave, Old Spice. Same as our wedding night. Always, I whispered, and meant it, in the twisted way you love the monster under your bed.
But sleep?
It evaded me, chased by nightmares of Kandahar dust and phantom screams. By week's end, the audit hit like a mortar round. MPs at our door at 0600, Jack's face paling as they hauled file boxes. Routine. Sir, the captain said, but his eyes screamed fraud. Jack played outraged, bellowing about witch hunts, but I saw the sweat beading on his brow. That night, he cornered me in the kitchen, hands like vices on my arms. You say anything? To anyone. His breath was hot, eyes wild. Me? I laughed, light as spun sugar. Jack, I'm your wife. He searched my face, found nothing but devotion, and released me. But as he stormed out to make calls, I texted the next contact on my list, a reporter at the Fayetteville Observer. Ex-Army intel with a grudge against brass. Source confirms, Harlan's cooking books. Docs attached.
Send.
The fracture was a chasm now, and I was dancing on the edge. The Observer piece dropped like a dud grenade on Monday morning, front page. Above the fold, Fort Bragg Colonel linked to questionable contracts. No names yet. Just innuendo thick as kudzu. But Jack's photo stared out from page 3. That stern jaw and buzzcut screaming guilty as sin. He slammed the paper on the breakfast table. Coffee sloshing over his cornflakes. This is bullshit.
Mags.
Some liberal hack stirring shit. I nodded sympathetically. Buttering toast. While inside, I toasted the gods of schadenfreude. The tip had been gold, redacted manifests showing overinflated invoices for Humvee parts that never shipped. Petty cash for his Cayman slush fund, but enough to make the bean counter sweat. By noon, his CO had him in a closed door at Division HQ, and I was fielding calls from the wives' circuit, sympathy laced with venom. How you holding up, Margaret? Jack's always been ambitious. Ambition. That's what they called it when you sold out your own for a corner office in the earring. I murmured platitudes, hung up, and scrolled the burner. Replies from the JAG whistleblower line. Anonymous queries piling up. The poison attempt, I'd filed that report too, routed through a DC lawyer who'd owed me a favor from my pre-Margaret days. When I was Maggie Riley, Signals whiz with a security clearance higher than Jack's ego. That afternoon, I met the lawyer, Elena Vasquez, sharp as a K-bar, in a Starbucks off I-95 where the baristas didn't salute. Atropine in the wine? That's attempted murder. Maggie. We can bury him. Her eyes gleamed. Manila folder fat with my uploads. I sipped my latte, black as my mood. Not bury. Expose. But slow, let him twist. We mapped it. Leak the psych eval forgery next. Paint him as the gaslighter. The abuser. Controversial? Hell yes. The base would split, his cronies calling me the hysterical wife. Scorned and spiteful, the grunts cheering the takedown of another fat cat. No heroes here. Just survivors clawing for air. Driving back, past the checkpoints where MPs waved me through with pitying glances, I detoured to the cemetery, Arlington's shadow in my mind, but this was Bragg's Potter's Field for the unclaimed. I parked by a weathered stone for private. Elias Grant, one of the Kandahar Three, his marker mossy and forgotten. Sorry, kid, I whispered, tracing the dates. 19 years old, died for Jack's oversight. I'd signed the condolence letter, lied to his ma in Ohio that it was enemy fire, not faulty intel from skimmed funds. Betrayal's echo chamber, my voice, his crime. Jack came home late, reeking of whiskey and rage, collapsing on the couch with a bellow that rattled the windows. They're suspending me pending investigation.
Me.
After 25 years, I perched beside him, hand on his knee, the dutiful sponge. It'll blow over.
Babe.
You're Jack Harlan. He pulled me close, burying his face in my neck, sobs racking that broad frame. For a heartbeat, pity flickered, the boy I'd met at a USMA mixer. All ideals and Irish charm. But then I remembered Tommy's face, Sarah's tears, and the flicker died. Who's doing this? He muttered. Some vet with a grudge? Maybe, I soothed, but my mind raced to the next play. Confront Sarah.
Force her hand. Ivajte till midnight.
When his snores filled the house like artillery, then slipped out to her place. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles like bullet craters on her driveway. She answered in a robe, hair tousled, eyes red-rimmed. Mags, it's late. Invite me in, or I scream it all to your neighbors. Inside, Tommy's toys littered the floor. A Lego fortress toppled like Jack's empire. We faced off in the kitchen, her back to the sink, me blocking the door. The boy's his. Isn't he? And you've been bleeding him dry, those support checks from the Caymans. Her face strained, confirming it. He loves us.
Mags.
You were. Collateral. Collateral. The word snapped something. I lunged, not with fists but words, spilling the poison, the ledgers, the lies. Join me, or you're next in the paper. She wavered. That cunning flip Jack loved, loyalty to him one breath, self-preservation the next. What do you want? A recording. Her voice confessing the affair. The payoffs. Insurance. As I drove away, her sobs echoing in my rearview, I felt the unraveling accelerate. No turning back. The next week was a pressure cooker. Jack's suspension leaked. The base a hive of rumors, bar fights at the enlisted club, wives' club dissolving into factions. I played neutral, hosting a support brunch where claws came out over mimosas. Margaret.
Dear.
Is it true about the audits? One asked, eyes gleaming. Just rumors, I demurred, but slipped Elena's card to a sympathetic major's wife, the one with her own suspicions about hubby's overseas trips. Jack flipped hard then, charming by day, volcanic by night. One evening, he smashed a lamp, shards flying like shrapnel. It's you, isn't it? Digging up old shit. I backed away, heart pounding, but held his gaze. Jack, you're scaring me. The lie worked, he crumpled, apologizing with roses and rough sex that left bruises blooming like accusations. In the dark after, his arm heavy across me, I plotted, the senator's aide. A drive to Raleigh. Anonymous drop at his office. Emails printed.
No traces.
By dawn, the FBI would sniff. But the flips weren't just his. Sarah called at 3 a.m. Hysterical, he's coming here. Threatening to take Tommy. I raced over, finding her barricaded. Jack pounding the door like Judgment Day. Open up. You whore. MPs arrived on my 911, hauling him away in cuffs for domestic disturbance. Brass versus base rabble, he'd be out by breakfast. But the optics? Toxic. As they loaded him, he locked eyes on me through the cruiser window. Realization dawning. Maggie. You bitch.
Bitch.
The word hung as I stood in the drizzle. Sarah clutching Tommy behind me. The unraveling was complete, threads frayed, ready to snap. Back home, alone in the wreckage, I poured a scotch, unspiked, and toasted the mirror. To fractures, I said, the reflection staring back with eyes like gunmetal. No remorse, just resolve. The war was on, and I was arming for bear. The fallout cascaded. Jack's posting evaporated. The senator's office radio silent under federal probe. He moved to the BOQ temporarily, for space, but his calls were daggers. I'll ruin you, Margaret. You'll be the villain. Villain?
Pot. Kettle.
I countered with Elena's filing, divorce papers, custody claims on Tommy via Sarah's recorded confession. Twisted. Yes, but fair in this funhouse. The base split hard, his old guard shunning me at the commissary. Grunts nodding solidarity in the aisles. Controversial decisions piled up. I leaked the psych eval to a victims advocate group, framing it as spousal abuse, knowing it'd smear him but also drag our marriage through the tabloid mud. Readers would debate, empowered survivor or vengeful harpy. One night, holed up with takeout lo mein and true crime docs. The burner buzzed. Anonymous text. Harlan's flipping on you. Blaming you for Kandahar. My blood iced. Of course, the ultimate misdirect. Painting me as the mastermind who'd framed him to cover my own instability. Cunning bastard. Always 3 moves ahead. But I had one more card. The real confession tape. From a Kandahar survivor who'd surfaced last year. Drunk dialing the hotline. It was the colonel he'd slurred. Sold us out for green. I forwarded it to the Observer's tip line. Then deleted the thread. Sleep came fitful. Dreams of collapsing hallways and phantom children. Morning brought MPs at my door, not for me, but with warrants for Jack's effects.
Mom.
We need your cooperation. I smiled, handing over a USB drive labeled recipes, his slush fund spreadsheets, disguised as my Betty Crocker notes. Anything for the truth, I said, voice steady as a salute. The unraveling peaked at the Article 32 hearing, a pretrial circus in a stuffy courtroom smelling of lemon pledge and desperation. Jack in dress blues, flanked by jag sharks, glaring daggers as I took the stand. Did you tamper with manifests, Mrs. Harlan? The prosecutor asked, gentle as a gut punch. I paused, the room holding breath, his allies smirking. Sarah in the back row white-knuckled. No, I said finally, voice clear. That was a lie I told to protect my husband. The real culprit? Him. Gasps rippled. Jack lunged, restrained by bailiffs. Liar. She's unhinged, but the evidence avalanche buried him. Tapes, ledgers, witness affidavits. The judge adjourned, but the verdict hung, guilty on fraud, pending murder for hire charges on the poison. As they let him out, our eyes met one last time. Why? Mags, he mouthed. Because love's a battlefield, I thought. And you declared war first.
Outside.
Reporters swarmed, flashes popping like tracers. Mrs. Harlan, is this revenge? One shouted. I pushed through, Elena shielding me. Revenge?
Nah.
Justice. Wrapped in barbed wire. The hearing's echo lingered like cordite after a firefight, Jack in pretrial detention at the base stockade. Me adrift in our empty house with its ghosts and granite countertops. The Wives' Club dissolved overnight, splintering into Team Harlan barbecues and my solitary coffee runs where cashiers averted eyes. Fayetteville buzzed. The Observer's follow-ups devouring column inches. Army wife's bombshell testimony rocks Fort Bragg. Hero to some, homewrecker to others. Sarah vanished. Tommy in tow, rumor had it Reno, with a trust fund I'd anonymously seeded from Jack's exposed accounts. Controversial? Dumping a kid's future into the mix? Damn right. But that boy deserved more than his father's shadow. Elena called from her Raleigh office, voice crackling with triumph. Feds are building a RICO case, racketeering, tied to 3 more bases. Your colonel's looking at Leavenworth.
20 plus.
I paced the kitchen, phone hot against my ear, staring at the Merlot stain on the tile from that night. And the poison?
A beat.
Manslaughter attempt. But Maggie. They'll want you to testify again. Deep dive into the marriage. The ugly underbelly, my complicity, the years of silence. No saint here, just a sinner settling scores. I agreed. Because reckoning demands blood. Even if it's your own. Prep sessions with Elena were therapy in fatigues, unpacking the Kandahar lie. How I'd forged my signature on that psych eval under duress. His hands around my throat, not literally, but in threats whispered over nightcaps. He said he'd kill Tommy if I talked. I'd confessed once. Post-poison. To a therapist whose notes Elena now wielded like a shiv. Flips abounded. Jack's lawyers painting me as the Lady Macbeth. Scheming from the wings. My allies countering with abuse stats. The military's dirty secret of brass-on-spouse violence. The real reckoning brewed in the shadows.
Though.
A week post-hearing, a unmarked sedan tailed me from the PX, Black Crown Vic. Government plates. I lost it in the post-housing maze. Heart hammering, but knew. Jack's fixer. The DC suit from the emails. Time to flip the board. I drove straight to the stockade, requesting a conjugal, last one. The MP said, eyes sympathetic. Jack shuffled in, orange jumpsuit clashing with his silver temples, cuffs chaining him to the table like the animal he'd become. Mags, he rasped, leaning forward, that old charm flickering. You came,
He said.
prim in pearls and cardigan, the picture of contrition. To end it, Jack. The feds. They're offering a deal. Testify against you. Lesser charge for me on the fraud.
Lie.
Bald as his scalp. But his eyes lit, cunning igniting. What charge? You were clean. I leaned in. Voice a conspirator's hush. Accessory.
After.
But flip with me, name the senator. The whole chain. We both walk lighter. He bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. Spilling names like loose change, the aide, the contractor in Virginia. Even a general 2 stars up. I recorded it all, hidden mic in my necklace. Elena's tech wizardry. As he railed on, vindictive glee twisting his face, I saw the man unmasked, not hero,
Not villain.
just a climber who'd slipped. You always were the smart one, Mags. That's why I love
No.
needed me. The betrayal's core, rotten as week-old MREs. Visiting hours ended with him optimistic, me hollow.
Outside.
I handed the recording to the Fed tailing me, Agent Kowalski. Burly Pole with a Brooklyn accent and a grudge against corrupt brass. Bait taken, I said, sliding into his passenger seat. He'll lawyer up, but it's gold. Kowalski nodded, firing up the engine. Risky play. Harlan. Flipping your own husband. Controversial as hell. Entrapment whispers would fly. Ethics boards convene. But in the gray zone of revenge, lines blur. He flipped me first, I replied, watching the stockade recede. The leak hit like monsoon season. Jack's taped confession. Anonymized but damning. Splashed across military times. Heads rolled. The senator resigned in oppressor-blaming rogue elements. The general took early retirement to spend time with family. Jack, charged with additional counts of conspiracy. His bail revoked. From my porch swing that night, lightning bugs winking in the humid dark, I watched the news on my phone, a glass of untainted Cabernet sweating in hand. Victory tasted like ash. Though, Tommy's birthday tomorrow. Uncelebrated it. Sarah's silence a void. But reckoning's a two-way street. The next morning, MPs knocked, not for triumph, but subpoena. Mrs. Harlan, we need you at HQ. Kandahar survivors' families. My stomach dropped. The 3 widows. The orphans, they'd sued the army years back. Settlement hushed with my lies as the linchpin.
Now.
with Jack's empire crumbling. They wanted me on the stand. You covered for him, their lawyer emailed.
Terse.
Perjury. Obstruction. Elena scrambled. But the flip was mine. Testify. Admit my sins. Beg leniency. Or stonewall. Risk contempt. Become the monster Jack painted. I chose the stand. Again, that same lemon-scented courtroom. Now packed with press and protesters chanting, "Justice for the fallen." The widows stared, faces etched with grief older than their years. Mrs. Harlan, the counsel began, voice steel. You lied to us. Said it was enemy action.
Why?
The room held breath. Jack watched from the defense table. A ghost in chains. His eyes pleading don't. I swallowed.
Throat dry.
Because I loved him. And I was scared. Gasps. Murmurs. Scared of what? Ma'am? Of losing everything. The life. The lie, it was all I knew. Tears came then. Real ones. Spilling as I unpacked it. The pressure. The gaslighting. The night he locked me in the bathroom till I signed the eval. I took the fall so he could rise. But it cost them. Gesture to the families. Everything. The judge adjourned for recess. But the damage was done. Sides cleaved deeper. Was I victim or villain? Enabler turned avenger? Or opportunist cashing in on corpses? Reporters mobbed me outside. Margaret. Did you poison yourself for sympathy? Low blow. But it stung. Forcing the ugly truth. Yes. I'd amped the drama. Played the frail wife to mask the fury. That night, alone with a frozen lasagna and CNN loop, the phone rang, block number.
Sarah. Mags.
It's bad. Tommy's asking for his dad. Her voice cracked. Reno's slot machines clinking faint in back. Come home. We need you. Need? After the Betrayal's banquet?
But the boy.
I booked a flight. Elena protesting. You're walking into a trap. Trap or not. Reckoning demanded faces. Reno was neon hell, casinos glowing like false promises. Air thick with smoke and regret. Sarah met me at a dive, off the strip. Tommy dozing in a booster seat. Oblivious. We talked till dawn over bad coffee. Her flips. My fractures. He promised me the moon, she said, echoing my wedding vows. We were both fools. I held her hand, the old friendship flickering. But as Tommy stirred, calling Aunt Mags, with Jack's grin, the chasm yawned. Take the money, I said, sliding an envelope final from the Cayman hack.
Clean now.
Start over. For him. Back in Bragg by week's end. The reckoning crested. Federal trial date set. Jack's plea bargain crumbling under the tape's weight. He wrote from lockup, you win. Mags. But was it worth it? Worth the divorce finalized in absentia? The house sold to fund my reparations to the families? The base shunning me as pariah? Controversial calculus. I'd freed them from his shadow. But chain myself to guilt's anchor. Yet in the quiet hours, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, I felt the scales tip. No full right. No pure wrong, just humans. Flawed as M16 jams. Picking up pieces. The reckoning wasn't over. It was just beginning. Trial week hit Fort Bragg like a summer squall, hot, unrelenting, uprooting secrets long buried under parade ground grass. The federal courthouse in Fayetteville swelled with spectators, grizzled vets in faded caps.
Lawyers in $1,000 suits.
Protesters waving signs. No justice. No peace, clashing with support our troops, even crooked ones. I testified day 2. Elena coaching me through makeup to hide the sleepless hollows. Stick to facts. Maggie. Emotions are ammo for the other side. Facts. The ledgers. The emails. The poison vial traced to a base lab via Jack's access code. But emotions? They leaked like blood from a fresh wound. On the stand, under fluorescent glare and the judge's gimlet eye, I faced Jack across the well, thinner now, jumpsuit hanging loose, but that defiant tilt to his chin unbroken. Mrs. Harlan, the AUSA began, crisp as starched collars. Describe the night of the dinner. I did. Voice steady. The fake cramp. The spiked Merlot. The collapse in the hall. Gasps from the gallery. But Jack's eyes bored in. Accusatory. Then the pivot. And your role in the Kandahar incident? The room tensed. Flashes popped. I confessed it all. The lies to Jag. The forged eval. The silence on the affair. I was complicit, I admitted, throat tight. But he orchestrated. Cross-exam shredded me. Jack's counsel, a silver fox from D.C. with a drawl like honeyed venom, painted the portrait. So you, Mrs. Harlan, a trained intelligence officer, claim ignorance for 15 years? Or was this revenge for an affair you couldn't stomach? Objection sustained, but damage done, jurors shifting. Whispers of gold digger rippling. Controversial? Understatement. I'd flipped from victim to vixen in their eyes. My revenge a scarlet thread weaving through the testimony. Sarah's deposition played next, videotaped from Reno. Her tear-streaked face confessing the boy. The payoffs. Jack's head bowed. But I caught his glare. You dragged her in? Conflagration spread beyond the courtroom. Media frenzy peaked with a 60 minutes teaser. Betrayal at Bragg. A colonel's fall. My face blurred but recognizable. Hate mail piled in Elena's office. Traitor wife. Should have poisoned yourself proper. Fan mail too. From abuse survivors. You gave us a voice. Sides entrenched. Debates raging on Reddit threads and Fox panels. Is she hero or harpy? No clean wins. Just the burn of scrutiny. Even Tommy factored in. A subpoenaed ghost. Social services probing Sarah's fitness. My anonymous funds flagged as suspicious. I'd meant to save him, but ignited a brush fire threatening custody. Jack took the stand day 4. A masterclass in flips. My wife was my rock, he began. Voice booming. Tears glistening. But instability. It crept in. The lies? Hers. To cope. Gasps. My nails dug crescents into palms. He spun it masterful. The poison a suicide gesture. Per the forged eval. Kandahar a joint error. I'd exaggerated for spite. Jurors leaned in. Some nodding, his old guard in the back row beaming like at a promotion ceremony. But then the AUSA dropped the tape, his stockade confession. Tinny but damning. Names. Dates. $signs spilling like contraband. Jack faltered. Face ashen. That was coerced. Light transparent as Fayetteville fog. Recess brought chaos. Reporters shoving mics. A vet's widow spitting at my feet. You profited off my boy's death. Elena hustled me out a side door to her sedan. Tires squealing onto Hay Street. He's losing them, she said, glancing rearview. But you're collateral now. True. The defense subpoenaed my therapist's notes, airing my hysteria like dirty laundry. That night, holed up in a motel off I-95, too risky for home, I paced carpet thin as resolve, burner buzzing with Kowalski, Harlan's talking plea. Full confession. Names you for accessory. Accessory. The word Claude. I'd known the risks, flipping states' ideals for his ops slush. Signing off on charity fronts that laundered bribes. Complicit? Yes. But catalyst?
No.
I called Sarah at 2 a.m., her voice groggy from Reno time. Mags? The lawyers. They're coming for custody. Panic edged her words. Tell them everything, I urged. The affair. The threats. Make him the villain. Flip again ally to adversary. Her testimony now a dagger aimed at Jack's paternal rights. Controversial calculus. Pitting mother against father. Child as pawn. But survival's ugly math. Court reconvened to fireworks. Jack's plea. Guilty on all. Fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. Sentence pending. But whispers of 25 to life. He didn't look at me as marshals let him out. Just a final flip of the bird to the AUSA. The gallery erupted, cheers from victims' kin, boos from his loyalists. I slipped out amid the scrum. Elena's arms steal around me. It's over, she said. Over? The conflagration raged on, civil suits from the families, my name forever tarred in military lore. But the real blaze ignited post-verdict, in a dive bar on Bragg's Edge where off-duty grunts drowned sorrows in PBR. I went for anonymity, nursing a Bud Light in a corner booth. When a shadow fell, private. Rodriguez, the paramedic from that night, now a corporal with laugh lines.
Ma'am, Mrs.
Harlan, buy you a drink. We talked till last call, his tour in Syria, my unraveling marriage. You saved yourself, he said, clinking bottles. That's more than most. Flattery? Or genuine? In the haze of neon and jukebox twang, it felt like absolution. Driving back under starless sky, the motel's neon sign flickering vacancy, I felt the burn shift from destruction to rebirth. But dawn brought reality. Elena's email, suit papers from the widows, $2 mill in damages, or testify in their Army Board hearing.
Pay or play.
I wired what I could from the house sale, but it wasn't enough. The flip, accept the hit, fund a scholarship in Elias Grant's name. Controversial closure, blood money transmuted, but whispers of buying silence would linger. Sarah arrived unannounced 2 days later. Tommy in tow, duffels at her feet. We're staying, she said, eyes defiant. Fight the custody with you.
Alliance reformed.
Fragile as eggshell. We bunked at Elena's guest house, plotting depositions over takeout tie. Jack's appeals loomed, but his empire?
Ash.
The conflagration peaked when 60 Minutes aired, me in shadows. Voice modulated. Betrayal isn't one act. It's a lifetime. Ratings soared. Debates exploded. Did she go too far? Redeem herself? In quiet moments, watching Tommy build forts from couch cushions, I questioned it all. Revenge's fire warms, but scars. No tidy bows, just embers, glowing with what-ifs. Embers smoldered into autumn. Fort Bragg's leaves turning blood-red under Carolina skies. Mirroring the trial's aftermath, a slow bleed of appeals, settlements, and sidelong stares. Jack's sentencing loomed like executioner's dawn. Leavenworth. 28 years.
No parole whispers.
I signed the divorce decree in Elena's office. Pen scratching finality. Her hand on my shoulder. New chapter. Maggie. New? Felt like Act 2 of the same grim play. The house sold to a young captain's family. Flagpole intact. Proceeds halved. My cut seating the grant scholarship, $50K annual for comms hopefuls. Elias's name etched on the plaque at the base library. The widows accepted. Grudging handshakes at the unveiling. Their eyes saying not forgiven, but funded. Sarah and Tommy settled in a rental off-post, her flipping to full-time ally, testifying in the custody hearing, spilling Jack's rages and absentee dad routine. The judge ruled swift, supervised visits. If ever. Tommy's world walled from his bio dad's poison. Controversial coda, denying a father's rights for crimes unborn. But the boy thrived. Freckles fading under first-grade sun. Aunt Mags. Build with me, he'd ask. Legos scattering like spent casings.
Idenail.
Hands steady now. Constructing towers instead of traps. But fate's twist lurked, sly as a sniper's glint. It uncoiled one crisp November eve. Post-sentencing broadcast, Jack in cuffs. No show for family. His allocution eclipsed. I regret my errors. I watched alone in the rental's dim living room. Sarah out at a NA meeting. Tommy abed with dinosaur dreams. The news cut to analyst chatter. Wife's testimony pivotal. When my burner pinged, unknown number.
Tech stock.
Not over. Meet midnight. Enlisted club lot.
Come alone. G.
Jack. From Max SEC? No, his fixer. The DC ghost. Heart thudding. I slipped out. A coat over pajamas. Driving the dark miles to the club where swing tunes once masked my collapse. The lot empty save sodium lamps buzzing like angry hornets. A figure detached from shadows, not the suit. But Rodriguez, corporal now. Off-duty in civvies. Hands jammed in jeans. Ma'am, Maggie. We gotta talk. He spilled it fast. Voice low, a thumb drive from an old tour buddy. Decrypted post-trial. Jack didn't act alone in Kandahar.
You knew that.
Right? I nodded. Wary, the general. The senator.
The chain.
But the drive? Footage. Grainy helmet cam from Elias Grant squad. Not just bad intel. But Jack ordering the ghost shipment. Voice barking cut corners. Boys, brass wants results. Damning. Yes. But the twist, my voice. Tinny over radio static. Confirm manifests. Colonel. All green. I'd signed off me. In the comms tent. Overriding flags to please him. Complicit? I'd known the skim. Initialed the waiver.
To protect?
Or ambition's echo. Climbing his ladder? Rodriguez's eyes softened. He flipped it on you in appeals, claiming you pushed the deal. Evidence backs him. The drive burned in my pocket, heavier than ledgers. Twist of fate. My revenge. Built on half-truths. Now boomeranging. Jurors would debate anew. Was she puppet or puppeteer? Sides I'd split, now shattered mine. Drive to Elena's at dawn. Spilling it over emergency coffee. Accessory after? Try before. Her face grave. We fight, pro bono for the families. Immunity deal. But the cost? Perjury retrial. My name forever the fall guy and framer. Sarah found out over breakfast. Tommy finger painting at the table. You covered for that? Her flip, shocked to scorn. Tommy's dad. But your sins too. We mended over tears. Her hand in mine. Fight it together. Alliance tempered in fire. The appeals court reconvened. My counter-testimony a gauntlet. I signed under duress. But yes, I erred. Judge's gavel fell. Reduced sentence for Jack. 18 years, me. Probation. Community service. Counseling vets' widows. Ironic absolution. Fate's cruel just peaked at Leavenworth drop-off, visitation day. Sarah opting out. Me driving solo, through Kansas plains, wheat whispering regrets. Jack in the booth. Glass partitioning us like our marriage's end. Mags. No charm. Just weariness. The drive. You saw. I nodded. Throat tight. We both fell.
Jack.
For the lie. He pressed palm to glass, I mirrored.
Fleeting.
Tell the boy. Sorry. Not forgiveness, truce. As I drove away. Prison shrinking rear view. The twist settled, no winners. Just wreckage. Readers would argue, did she redeem? Or double down on deceit? Back in Fayetteville. Winter's bite softening to spring. I started over. Adjunct gig at the community college. Teaching cyber ethics to wide-eyed freshmen. Sarah dated a mechanic. Tommy calling him Uncle Mike. The scholarship thrived. Elias's plaque sun guilt. Controversial end? Happy for some, justice served. Shadows lifted. Tragic for the scars, mine. Etched deep as dog tags. One evening. Porch swing creaking under stars. Rodriguez, now Dave, joined with beers. Heard about the appeal. His hand brushed mine.
Warm.
Proud of you.
Prida?
In the gray, but as fireflies danced, I leaned in, tasting possibility. Revenge's blaze cooled to hearth glow, fate twisted, but didn't break. In America's heartland grit, that's victory enough, debated, divided, but undeniably mine.